a little bit of my story behind. I work as Tableau consultant at New Data Labs, which is one of Polish Tableau partners. And what I do a lot is teaching. I am trainer. I'm also internal trainer. I've been doing at least 60 training days last year, plus some time for preparing this. So a lot. And you can easily imagine that what I hear a lot are questions starting usually with how, but very often also with why, like, why should I pay attention to the layout? Why should I invest my precious time into making it nice while it already tells the whole truth? My digits speak for themselves. Why should I go any further? And well, it's not that easy to find the convincing answer. And just recently, I have found a wonderful book by John Jablonski, which is called The Laws of UX. And well, I have read it and found that a couple of things that he writes there are very, very much useful for somebody working, building Tableau dashboards. Unlike the last presentation, I will be talking mainly from the perspective of consultant, somebody who helps others and who either teaches or builds dashboards for others or explains them how to go beyond some problems. So that will be slightly different. And let's move to my next slide. I will be talking about 6 different effects that have been developed over time from early 30s till more or less 2000. And each of them will be covered with something that it has to do with our work. Okay. The very first one I would like to talk about is von Restorff effect. Hedwig von Restorff had been a psychologist from Germany, from Berlin, working among others in 30s, and she has described something called isolation paradigm. Okay? It came from her experiments. What it tells is that the element that differs from the rest is more likely to be remembered. Kind of obvious. We know that we have to underline things with color, shape, size, empty space around, name, whatever else. But that's not everything. The second layer of the problem is that we have to slightly limit ourselves with underlining, to be slightly moderate with that. And you probably remember the moment in internet where there have appeared lots and lots of different pop-ups that were colorful, loud, bright, and we soon started not noticing them. We just ignored them. They were just like some noise in the background. And it could be the same if on your dashboard there would be too many underlines. So it's good to underline just what you need and nothing more, and ask yourself the question, what I need to underline. And there is a second layer of the problem, because even if we underline something, some people might still not notice, even if we do that well. Who are these? For sure, these are people who suffer from color blindness. They see words slightly differently. So what we could do for them, and actually what would be also the best practice for everybody, double underline. What do I mean? If you would have a piece of text and you would like to underline that with color, it would be a good idea to make it also either bold or underlined. If you want to underline a bar, like on my slide, on a bar chart, you probably would underline that with color. Then second thing would be, if it's first or last, the size would be underlining by itself. But if you underline something that is in the very middle, you can underline that with color. And for example, add to that labeling. label only the one. That's also very good solution. So what is helpful for people with color blindness might actually be good practice for everybody. And I've got here an example of dashboard that I have done with one of my clients. Actually, in the very beginning, I got the dashboard that was, well, with very nice layout, with amazing content, but the problem is that everything, absolutely everything in it was underlined. And you could not really see what is the most important. Maybe the one in frame, but that's not too obvious. With the second one, what I wanted was to show the main numbers to make them slightly more catchy and take somewhere into background the things like icons that are probably not that important. So that's the good example, probably. What do we have here else? Well, I need to change the slide. I did that the wrong side. Okay. The second law I would like to talk about is called Hicks law, and was named after British psychologist William Edmund Hicks, who stated that the more options and the more complicated they are, the longer it takes to take a decision. There is a nice complicated formula to that, but if we say that in simple words, the more options, the longer it takes to take decision. The more complicated options are, the longer it takes to take decision. If we add some extra options, the time needed to take decision increases logarithmically, so very, very quickly. So what can we do? Of course, we can have limited options in our filters, parameters, set controls, etc. But we can also divide decisions into stages, and that should speed up the process. So instead of one filter with 300 options, have a hierarchy of filters. What else? The good option is to have clear instructions. Well, in my job, I hardly ever have chance to explain the end users how dashboard should be used. So if I give them clear instruction inside of the dashboard, they won't have to decision, should I go here or there? They will know what to do, just exactly and precisely. Okay, we also should get rid of any abundant steps if these appear. And one more thing, icons. Icon can be decision by itself. If it's too general, people might not really know what it goes about. And that's why sometimes it's very good to test on people the icons. And that's also the reason why there are developed phones for elderly people, which are slightly different. No, not huge sets of icons, but less buttons, less decisions, something lighter, smoother, and slightly more user-friendly for somebody who might not understand all the modern icons. Okay. That was the second effect, and that leads us to the third. The third one was developed by Paul Maurice Fitz, another psychologist, the one who worked on human movement model. And what he has discovered is that the time to acquire a target is a function of distance and the size of the target. Again, nice formula. What does it stand for? Well, the closer is an object and the bigger it is, the easier it is to reach it. So what does it mean for us? Slightly different implications for building a dashboard on desktop and building a dashboard on phone layout. For desktop, well, when you want your things to be first filtered and then shown and then analyzed, put your filters just to be found first on upper right corner and make the icon or whatever you have there big enough. If you want your dashboard to be first analyzed and then filtered or changed, put your filters and controls either hidden in a hidden container or on the right side. If you are putting them into hidden container, make the icon big enough. Important thing. It goes even more complicated if we go to the mobile layouts. First of all, we've got our fingers. The diameter of the finger is usually between 10 and 14 millimeters, which translates into 1/3 or half of the inch. And the buttons we put on the mobile dashboard have to be at least that big. Normal control, filter control, or set controls might be too small. So yeah, that's important. So make the buttons at least 48 by 48 pixels with 1/6 of that size between them. And remember that some people on your mobile layout will work moving things with their thumbs. And that means that buttons that are at the bottom part of the dashboard might be way easier reachable than these that are at top. So that's another important point. And that brings us to probably best known law, which is Miller's law, discovered in some mid-50s. It states that the average person can only keep 7 ± 2 items in their working memory. The size of the items might differ. Normally, you put probably, if you think about the digits, you would remember 1 or 2 together, maybe 3. But if you think about example like the year when you have when you've been born, you probably will get 4 digits all together as one item, and that will be obvious, like 1978 for me. So what's the idea coming from that for us? Well, it's good to divide things in chunks. Also on the dashboard, if you have one dashboard without empty spaces, without spaces between elements, it looks like a huge crunch of information, a lot of them, too much to process. If you give empty space between elements, if you create some kind of mental net behind that layout net, it will be much easier to process. Do we have to have 5 or 7 elements on dashboards? Not necessarily. You do not have to remember everything that is there on the dashboard. But if you put up there in the upper part of the dashboard 7 digits, 7 big numbers, one by one, each of them big and colorful, and want your viewers to keep this in mind when they will be analyzing everything underneath, that might not be that easy. People might either forget the numbers or withdraw from analyzing. That's not a good idea. So it's good to have less chunks and make things easier to memorize. And this brings me to the almost one more of the effects I would like to tell you about. And if you are to remember just one of that, please think about the one. It's aesthetic usability effect. It has pretty interesting story behind that. So in the mid-90s, Japanese researchers have been checking how people perceive different cash machine ATM interfaces. And they have found that often aesthetically pleasing design is perceived as more usable. So the aesthetical pleasing dashboard would be perceived as better working. Sounds great. And I think that's something that gives sense to half of my work. And then they have run that analysis slightly farther in that research, and they have found that also if something is aesthetically pleasing, it is found so easy that people actually can work faster with it. So that's really the answer why we should put attention to nice layout, to design and stuff like that. Why is it worth investing time into this? So remember, the aesthetically pleasing dashboard is perceived as better working, and users will work with that much faster. There is another side effect of that, and it's good to be aware if you're a developer, if you develop stuff in Tableau and you have to test stuff. Nicer products are less criticized. If they are less criticized and you give your testers something that looks perfectly and is so smooth, beautifully and nice, they actually might oversee testing problems. So give them something to catch, and they will do their work really well. Okay. And one more effect before I sum up. That's pretty fresh. That's from more or less 2000. It's called Jacob's Law. And it says that users spend most of their time on other sites, and they prefer your site to work the same way as all the other sites they already know. What is it about? Do we have to copy what is done somewhere there in internet onto our dashboards? Not necessarily. Well, what actually it means is that people are creating some kind of mental models of how do they should interact with a website. If they can use the mental model they have already created, it's way easier than creating a new one. So they will prefer that. Same as our clients who say that Excel is always the best. You know that, I'm sure. And so what could we do? Definitely, if you work for a company, it's good to develop the kind of model layout that people will work with. Design beforehand, colors, icons, certain rules of how do we hide containers, where do we put icons, etc. What kind of other graphic design we incorporate. And if all the dashboards in the company will follow at least the minimum of these rules, they will be for users way less difficult to use, and definitely more liked. So get inspired, but do that slightly critically. And then remember one more thing, always function is first, then form. So if you copy some good form, do that, but remember that first thing you have, which has to be covered by your dashboard, is its original function. That's the most important. And to sum up my presentation, I have a couple of small recommendations. So when you are building a dashboard, you can get inspired, definitely like in a way that has been described previously by Priya, but also just from internet and seeing some websites. But remember that the form should follow function. So function is here the most important. Then the other important thing is to design with layout in your head, at least this mental net. It will make your way quicker. It will make it more efficient, but it will make the effect also way easier to use for your viewers. What else? Be moderate with underlining. Remember about instructions, and that's very important, especially if you don't ever meet the end viewers of your dashboards. What else? Match design to the device, and beware that designing for phone is something completely different from designing for desktop. And finally, whatever you are doing, make it aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful design in the world. It's enough if it has negative space, if it is intentionally formatted, if the design is just simple and nice, nothing extravagant, but make it aesthetically pleasing and everything will work perfect. So thank you. And if there are any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. I'm checking if there is anything